Epic 7 players, welcome back to another how to play video, and in this one we are going to be talking about another edgy anime character voiced by Christina V, Ilynav. As with all of my videos, I will be doing a comprehensive breakdown over the character's stats, skills, some potential endgame builds, as well as some pointers on how to use her effectively in RTA, what characters you should probably pick with her, and which ones you should probably avoid picking her into. So, with that out of the way, as always, let's just jump right into the video. Ilynav is a Fire Knight of the Gemini zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with both Charles and Mort. When we take a look at her stats, she has 957 attack, 6,148 health, 109 speed, 634 defense, 27 critical hit chance, 150 critical hit damage, 5% dual attack chance, and no effectiveness or effect resistance. Gemini Knights have a really weird stat pool. If you've ever built Charles or Mort, you probably already know this. They have low health and defense for a Knight, but it's still good compared to the average character in Epic 7. They also have really high attack for a Knight, but it's still really bad compared to the average damage dealer in Epic 7. And they also have crazy high critical hit chance, but somehow it's still stupidly difficult to get 100% crit chance on them for some reason. Yeah, so the stat line just appears like it's geared towards a speedy damage dealer on a Knight class, but honestly, it feels like it just falls flat. And, you know, you're basically relying on the character's kit plus multipliers to salvage the stat line. So you got to ask yourself, does Ilynav clear that bar? Does her kit actually save her? Well, let's just go and take a quick look at it. Ilynav's S1 is Rush. It has a 0.7x multiplier as well as an 8% max health multiplier, which means it's important to build high health on this character if you want to hit truly high damage. When her S1 isn't caused by a dual attack, there's a 50% chance that it's replaced with her S2 Punish instead. Her S2 Punish has a 3 to 4 turn cooldown based on Molagora's, a 1x attack multiplier, and a ludicrous 18% max health multiplier. When we look at other health scaling heroes in the game, such as Alencia or even like Mediator Coeric, 4% is usually on the low end. Somewhere between like 6 to 10, 6 to 12 is usually considered like average to good. 18% is basically unheard of. Additionally, this move gives Ilynav a 2-turn defense buff, and it also inflicts injury on the target up to 20% based on how much damage this move ends up doing. Even though, you know, this move does have injury on it, you should think of it as a nice bonus. Injury is designed to counter Knights, Bruisers, and Soul Weavers, but it has yet to make a dent in high-end PvP, so you should think of this as a nice little bonus on the move. The major selling points on the move are the defense buff and the ridiculous health scaling on the move. Her S3 Repel has a 4 to 5 turn cooldown based on Molagora and has a 0.7x attack multiplier and a 12% max HP multiplier. It grants critical hit damage increase to all of your allies for 2 turns, as well as gives Ilynav herself a 2-turn immunity buff. It also has this really sick attack animation. Lastly, we have her Soul Burn, which lowers the cooldown of Punish by 2 turns. That means you can effectively use Punish every turn if this move is Molagora. Honestly, for a Soul Burn, this is really weak. I really would have liked to have seen this be an increase in damage, because with Rush's passive on it, we can basically proc Punish every single turn already. We don't need to spend souls to get Punish every turn. There's a high chance that we're already going to be spamming Punish with this character to begin with. I would have again liked to have seen some kind of damage increase to the S2 or S3, or a increase to buff durations for the S3. If this character ends up falling flat or ending up not making a dent in the meta at all, I think changing the Soul Burn will end up being one of the first places that Smilegate and Super Creative look to change the character. When it comes to Molagora Priority, definitely prioritize Punish over all else. Whether you're trying to use her as a main DPS or just trying to dip your toes and use her sparingly in RTA, Punish is absolutely the best move in the kit. It has a ludicrous multiplier, so you want to max out that damage as quickly as possible. After that, your choice is either going to be Repel or Rush. I personally would take Repel to the -1 turn cooldown and then max Rush, so that way when I fail to proc the Punish proc on S1, I'll at least get some decent chunk of damage instead of hitting like a wet noodle. But which one you decide to do, I'll leave that entirely up to you. Just make sure you're maxing S2 first. And as with all damage dealers, if you intend to seriously use them for a long time, consider plus 15ing them. Given that Ilynav shares a stat pool with both Charles and Mort, I feel it's pretty easy for us to infer that a counter build with Elbrus Ritual Sword works really well on her. While the damage isn't as impressive as Charles, the fact that she does scale off health like Mort gives her a lot more durability, which I feel like is a fair trade-off. The build that we're going to talk about is the one I feel you're going to want to play if you are trying to play Ilynav as a damage dealer. It's particularly good for Guild War offense and defense, in my opinion, due to the smaller team size. Ilynav, I feel, excels there simply because teams are less well-rounded, which means there's less ways to shut her down or shield their teammates from getting dunked on by her S2. When we take a look at the actual build, counter immunity, I feel, is ideal. The counter obviously increases the amount of S2s that you get out of a match, and the immunity will shield you from things like blind at the start of the match, so that way your S2s will basically go unchecked. When we take a look at the actual numbers, we want 1800 attack, 1125 defense. I know that's a really strange number, but if you allow me to explain with the math, because her S2 gives a defense buff, if we do 60% of 1125, 60% is how much a defense buff gives you, you will get 675. 675 plus 1125 is 1800 defense. Once you start going above 1800 defense, there are seriously diminishing returns. So I feel like 1125 is the right number to go with because of how frequent you will get the S2 up with this build. 21k health, 180 speed, 100 crit chance, 280 or more crit damage. When we take a look at the right side, we want a crit damage necklace. You can use HP percentage, but I feel like it's honestly not really worth it. You're basically trading anywhere between 12 and 20% of the damage for something like 2.5 to like 3k HP. So it's basically going to end up being your choice. HP percentage ring, speed boots. I feel like you're just simply too slow if you play anything else. If you play HP or attack, you're just not going to get enough turns. Yes, you will be spamming the S2, but it is kind of important to get that S3 critical damage buff up to help increase the damage that the S2s do throughout the game. I think you'll just be simply too slow and relying too much on RNG to get the most out of the character. When it comes to artifacts, Elbrus Ritual Sword only. This is literally the only option I would play. It's simply too important. You just get so many extra attacks in a standard RTA game or a standard, Guild War attack or defense with Elbrus Ritual Sword. You're basically getting anywhere between 2 or 3. Sometimes if you're really lucky, you might get even like 5 or 6 extra attacks in a game, and that can really decide a match. So I really just wouldn't play anything else besides Elbrus Ritual Sword on this character. The other option to play Ilynav that it seems really solid to me, at least in RTA, is more of a speedy support / slow cleave build. You're basically going to try and build her fast enough to go before any of your hard-hitting damage dealers. Think of things like Landy, and tanky enough to not outright die before it gets to her turn. The build is especially potent when you combine her with other openers that give an attack buff, such as Blue Rose or even something like maybe even General Purgus. You can have them push up the team, give your entire team an attack buff before her, have her fought with a critical hit damage buff for your entire team, and then your AoE character will go third and fall in line with them and just kind of cleave the enemy team right off the face of the planet. So when we take a look at the actual build, speed set is going to basically be a given, considering you are trying to go as fast as possible and just kind of use big burst AoEs as quickly as you can before your opponent can get set up. Looking at the actual stats, we want 1700 attack, 1200 defense. We're not on counter set, so we're going to get far less S2s on this build, so I feel like having the extra defense actually matters at this point. 20k health, 225 speed is the minimum. You can go higher if you want to. Honestly, you are really going to need to speed tune this with the other characters that you draft. You really want her to go before your DPS. You want to kind of guarantee that she goes before the DPS. So again, kind of mess around with your gear and your characters and figure out where you want her to be. I feel like you want it to be 225 or faster. I'm sure there's some crazy person out there that will end up with like a 250 speed Ilynav at some point. That might be possible. But again, speed tuning for you, that's what's important. 100% critical hit chance just to do the damage, and again 280 crit damage again just to do the damage. We want to try and milk as much damage as possible. We don't want her to hit like a wet noodle or have no survivability, so I want to make sure that my characters are optimal and have decent stats in case things go awry. When we look at the right side gear, critical hit damage or HP percentage necklace, again, same reasoning as with the last build. HP percentage ring and speed boots, we're trying to go as like an opener or before character, so again, gotta go speed boots. Looking at the artifact, Elbrus Ritual Sword, again, I just simply feel it synergizes just too well with the character. It just feels like the best thing you could possibly be playing for her kit, even if she's basically meant to be a supporter. I mean, if you really want more synergy for slow cleave, I guess something like Warhorn might be decent, but I would probably still just play Elbrus Ritual Sword. Taking a look at possible teammates for Ilynav, she's pretty well rounded, so a lot of things actually work pretty well with her. So you have quite a number of options when it comes to things like that. We've already talked about characters like Blue Rose and General Purgus in the build section, but another attack buffer that you might not be thinking about so much is Mui. Mui gives your whole team an attack buff and also kind of shuts down the openers on the enemy team and strips them of any defensive buffs that they might end up having at the start, which basically will allow your Ilynav to do full unmitigated damage for the most part. And based on what EE she's on, you could end up getting like a silence and stuff their opener, which is really nice for you, so that way you might not get unbuffable on Ilynav. It's also pretty good because you might end up with like a extra turn into a stun, which can basically set you up for some pretty awesome cleave situations like that slow cleave build we talked about. Other characters to consider, tanks obviously are always really good. Troublemaker Crozet stands out really well here, especially if he is protecting the Ilynav, because if they attack the Crozet, the Ilynav will attack them. If they attack the Ilynav, the Crozet will end up attacking them. So it's really nice as well. Similarly to that, we have Falconer Clury, who can use her S3 to lock down a character at the start and force them to go into Clury herself, which could trigger Elbrus Ritual Sword and might lead to an instant kill from the defense break that's already on there. And lastly, something that is like a cleanser, like say maybe Desert Jewel Basar, seems pretty good as well. One of the biggest weaknesses I feel like Ilynav as a character has is that unbuffable completely stuffs her. She needs to get the defense buff up to survive long enough, and the crit damage buff adds much needed damage to her kit. Again, her damage is really good due to her multipliers, but it's nowhere near as high as something like a completely cracked out Charles. So any kind of buffs that she can get is really helpful, and you don't want her to have unbuffable, otherwise she's just going to lose that. Last ones I really want to talk about are characters such as Kisei, Spectre Tenebria, and Landy. These are characters that are commonly used in stealth. Because they are in stealth, enemies will have to use AoE to try to knock them out of stealth, which will force the Elbrus Ritual Sword proc, which means more S2s for you and more damage for your Ilynav. Coming right off of talking about how Kisei, Spectre Tenebria, and Landy are pretty good teammates, they're also really bad matchups for Ilynav. Kisei, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I have this character as a bad matchup for a character in every single video we're doing lately. But yeah, she's really OP in the current meta. She's the best blue damage dealer. Ilynav gives herself buffs, which means that the S1 from Kisei is just going to absolutely rip through her. The S3 can remove buffs if she actually has buffs anyway, push back her cooldowns. Ilynav already has a type disadvantage against her and will have a very difficult time getting her out of stealth. Spectre Tenebria, you can't counter her S1, which means Elbrus Ritual Sword is dead in the water, and you don't do enough damage with S3 to actually kill her. Landy is a very similar story to Spectre. You can't counter her, so good luck. So when it comes to good matchups, I don't really think that there's specifically characters so much as compositions that Ilynav is actually good against. She's really good, I feel like, in two specific scenarios. The first of which is if you can ban one of their damage dealers and leave them in a scenario where they only have one glass cannon damage dealer, think like, say, Arbiter Vildred's the only damage dealer that they have, you can kind of pick her there. They will, probably use their S3 with Arbiter Vildred. You'll get an Elbrus Ritual Sword proc and then kill them outright immediately with S2. And once Arbiter, is out of the game entirely from just proccing your Elbrus Ritual Sword, that's it. There's no more damage on the team. You've basically won as long as you can survive through any greater attack buff shenanigans. So I can see her being very strong there. The other is that she's very good versus bruiser or tank heavy comps. These are the kind of comps that you see a character like Alencia usually drafted on. As long as she has sustain, there's no unbuffable on the enemy team, and no one can outright one-shot any of your heroes, I feel like her S2 can completely take over a game and grind it out and basically get you that easy win. So that's going to be it for the Ilynav video. I must confess there was a lot of inference and, pre-planning for this character before she came out. I had to look at a lot of stuff from not only Charles, but Mort to kind of come up with the builds and then actually put it into practice and testing to see if it actually worked out. So, yeah, hopefully this is super helpful to you guys. It did take a bit more work trying to set this up than the standard how to play video that I normally did. I feel like a lot of people in the community also are super worried whether or not is this character actually good. I feel like it is less of a thing of whether or not the character is actually good or not, and more so that the current meta isn't exactly the most favorable to her. when we look at other traditional Elbrus ritual sword characters such as Charles and maybe even like a Mort, they're kind of driven out by the popularity of Carrot. And then the other big DPS that you see lately are Spectre and Landy, which cannot be countered, so Elbrus doesn't really work that well against them. So I think, you know, if she's not super great right now, we simply just need to wait for a shift in meta for her to be, you know, actually more relevant. I think as it currently stands, I would say she is a fringe playable unit in higher end. She might be like a 7.5 out of 10 hero. So, you know, if you're worried, you know, she's not a bad unit for by any means. I think she is significantly better than a lot of the episode 3 heroes that we've got. A lot of characters we've gotten in the last year feel honestly quite underpowered. And Ilynav kind of like rides that line between, you know, just being really good and not good enough. I think if she ended up getting an EE, she would end up being a fantastic character. I really feel like they need to do something with the S1 besides it having a chance to proc the S2. It just feels completely lackluster. If it had like any other additional effect, she would just feel like a much more complete or well-rounded character. But as she stands now, if she is your waifu, you know, I don't feel like your resources are going to waste. I do think she is worth playing simply for the awesome, you know, animations, and, you know, she's super fun to play, and obviously I'm a bit biased because the voice actress is really awesome as well. So yeah, if you ended up enjoying this video at all, please consider leaving a like or a subscribe. I want to thank you guys so much for the 1,000 subs that we ended up hitting. When I first started doing these Epic 7 videos, you know, I wasn't really in the greatest place. A lot of depression, a lot of things happened to me, so that, you know, since the pandemic started, and my self-confidence was kind of in the toilet. But you guys have given me, you know, such wonderful things to say, you know, and it's like truly humbling. And you know, hopefully I can keep making more of these videos to help you guys out. So yeah, if this video helped you and you think it'll help your friends, as always, please share it with your guildmates and whatnot. You know, as long as I can keep teaching and, you know, sharing stuff and trying to help people, I'll keep doing it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks again.